Hi there. You're watching Reddit Confessions. Grab a drink, take a breath, and buckle up, because my silence held everything she never saw coming. I didn't leave a note, didn't pack a bag, didn't even close the front door behind me. I walked out with nothing but the shirt I slept in and the keys I found on the floor beneath the dog bowl. The sun wasn't even up yet, but I was done. Not angry, not broken, just done. That's worse, I think. But let me be clear, this isn't a revenge story. There's no dramatic explosion, no dramatic gotcha moment. There's just a tired man, a woman who thought he'd never leave, and a slow unraveling that should have shattered me, but didn't. Because by the time she crossed the final line, I had already disappeared on the inside. So how did we get here? Let's rewind 48 hours. It was a Thursday. Nothing special. I was eating reheated chili on the couch, watching a documentary on whales, when I heard laughter from the other room. Not a laugh meant for me. One of those soft, flirty chuckles you only give when someone makes you feel wanted. She was in our bedroom. The door wasn't fully closed. I should have turned up the volume, maybe forced myself to pretend again. But I didn't. Instead, I listened. Not out of curiosity, but from habit. That pathetic, self-loathing instinct you develop when you know your partner's hiding something and you still hope it's all in your head. I couldn't hear the words. Just tones. The cadence of betrayal. The "I'm still awake" giggle. The whisper-laugh combo that tells you there's history in that conversation. And then, silence. The call ended. She came out 5 minutes later. Didn't look me in the eye. Said she was going to bed early. She kissed me on the forehead like I was her kid brother. I waited until I heard her breathing shift into a fake sleep rhythm. You know what I mean? The kind you use when you want someone to think you're sleeping so they don't ask questions. That's when I went through her purse. I hate that I did that. I hate that I knew exactly what I was looking for. And I hate that I found it. 2 tickets to Palm Springs. 1 suitcase already packed beneath the bed. 2 toothbrushes in a Ziploc bag. Only 1 wedding ring. Not mine. There was no note. No apology. No explanation. I zipped everything back up. Placed it exactly where I found it. And then I did something I still don't understand. I tucked myself back into bed beside her. I laid there for hours. Not angry. Not even sad. Just awake. Listening to the woman I once called my safe place breathe like nothing had happened. She had already left me. She just hadn't walked out the door yet. So when morning came, and she told me she was heading to a client meeting out of town, I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I didn't ask her why. I poured her coffee, kissed her cheek, told her to drive safe. She smiled. She actually smiled. And when she walked out the door, dragging the same suitcase I'd repacked, the same betrayal in a carry-on, I stood still for a while. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe 5 years. Then I left. No message. No keys. No fight. Just a quiet man, walking away, because she didn't notice I was already gone. I didn't go far when I walked out. Just sat in my car, staring at the windshield like it might suddenly offer me direction. The morning sun hadn't even fully broken yet, and the whole neighborhood was still asleep, blissfully unaware that my entire marriage had just ended without a single word spoken. I remember gripping the steering wheel, not because I was angry, but because I needed to hold on to something. Something solid. Something that didn't lie to me while wearing my last name. I didn't drive to a friend's house. I don't really have those anymore. Somewhere along the way, I gave up my hobbies, my hangouts, even my lunch breaks, just to be available. To pick her up when her car broke down. To attend her sister's art shows. To be the husband who showed up. I guess I thought that would mean something. I guess I thought being dependable was the same as being loved. I parked in front of a strip mall diner with peeling signage and a coffee pot that looked like it had been brewing the same batch since 1993. I sat in the corner booth and ordered eggs I wouldn't eat, just to look like I belonged, just to not go home. At 10:12 a.m., I got a text. Just 1 word. Landed. She really sent that. Like I was her assistant. Like I wasn't the man she just quietly betrayed. No, I miss you. No guilt. Just a logistical update. As if she were flying for work and not to spend a secret weekend with someone else. I wanted to respond. I typed a dozen things. Did you pack your soul too? Does he know you snore when you lie? Tell him I hope he's better at pretending you're enough. But I deleted every message. I stared at the blinking cursor until it felt like a heartbeat mocking me. And then I turned my phone off. I didn't cry. I want to say I did, but I didn't. I just felt empty. Like all the emotions had already happened in private, over the past year. and I'd just now caught up with the truth. The betrayal wasn't fresh. It had roots. Long, twisting ones that had wrapped around everything I thought was safe. I sat there for hours. No one called. No one noticed I was missing. And that's when it really hit me. I had made myself so small, so convenient, so invisible, that even disappearing didn't make a sound. Later that day, I went home. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to see it one more time. The place where I lost myself. Our home was spotless, like she'd staged it for real estate photos. The bed was made, but only on one side. My side had the same crease from that last morning. It felt like a museum exhibit labeled, "The husband who stayed too long." I wandered the house like a stranger. Every photo frame mocked me. Every drawer held proof of the life I poured myself into. I noticed small things I had been blind to. An unfamiliar cologne bottle in her vanity drawer, 2 wine glasses in the sink when I'd stopped drinking 6 months ago, and a new set of lingerie tags in the trash. All of it pointed to the same conclusion. She hadn't made a mistake. She had made a plan, and I was never in it. I could have confronted her. Could have sent her a picture of the empty closet space or her ticket stub. But I didn't. Because if I needed to prove she had betrayed me, then I was still trying to earn honesty from someone who sold it years ago. So instead, I packed what little I cared about. My books, a few shirts, the watch my dad gave me, and then I did one final thing. I wrote a note, not to her, but to myself. A reminder, a boundary, a line drawn in permanent ink so I could never walk backward into that silence again. It said, "You were never hard to love. You were just easy to leave." I taped it to the inside of the front door. Not for her, for me. Then I locked up, dropped the keys in the mailbox. And this time, when I walked away, I didn't stop. I didn't go to a hotel. I couldn't afford one. I didn't crash on anyone's couch either, because by then, I'd made myself so forgettable that no one would have noticed I was gone, let alone offered me a place to land. So, I went to the only place that still remembered me before I started shrinking to fit her life. My grandmother's old trailer. It was falling apart, still tucked behind the rusted gas station in Wilmette County, where even cell signal hesitated before showing up. But the key still worked, and no one had stepped inside in years. The moment I opened the door, the smell of dust and old wood filled my lungs. And weirdly, I felt like I could breathe again. The place was frozen in time. The same floral couch from my childhood summers. The same scratchy curtains. The same leaning bookshelf with Reader's Digest collections stacked like bricks. And it was quiet. So quiet. It made me wonder how long it had been since I'd sat in silence without the weight of walking on eggshells. I dropped my duffel bag and just stood there, unsure what to do with my hands. I felt stupid for not having a plan. Shouldn't I have been more dramatic? Shouldn't I have burned her clothes or left a recording or something? But the truth is, when betrayal leaks into your life drop by drop, you don't explode. You dissolve. The next few days were a blur. I stayed off my phone, ate canned soup, read old paperbacks with cracked spines, slept under blankets that smelled like mothballs and memory. And I thought, a lot. I thought about all the times I blamed myself for her pulling away. The times I stayed up waiting for her to come home, only to lie and say, I wasn't tired anyway. The birthdays she skipped, the weekends she spent recharging, the moments I told myself, love is patient, love is quiet, love is invisible. And then I remembered the night she told me, I just need space. God, how I clung to that. Like space was a gift I was supposed to wrap and present with a bow. I gave her space. She built a whole second life in it. By day 4, I finally turned my phone back on. Dozens of messages lit up the screen. 2 were from her. One said, "Can we talk?" The other, "You didn't need to make this a thing, Colin." That one hit harder than the affair itself. Like I had overreacted. Like walking out on the woman who had planned a secret getaway with another man was childish. Like I was the dramatic one for choosing to leave instead of sitting silently like a decorative piece in her curated life. I didn't reply, not because I was strong, but because I knew if I answered, I'd apologize. I'd find a way to twist the blame around and wear it like I always did. That was my pattern. I was a professional emotional contortionist, always bending so others could stretch out and get comfortable. But not this time. On the 5th day, I drove back into town. I didn't go home. I didn't even call her. I just drove past the office where she worked. I wasn't stalking her. I wasn't trying to catch her in the act. I think I just wanted to see if the world looked any different now that I wasn't trying so hard to belong in hers. And that's when I saw them. I didn't expect to. It was a random Tuesday afternoon. But there they were, walking out of a cafe, her hand lightly touching his back as they laughed about something I wasn't supposed to witness. She didn't look guilty. She didn't even look worried. She looked relieved, like I had unknowingly made it easier for her to have the life she wanted without the burden of pretending to want me. They didn't see me, and I didn't wait for them to. I turned the wheel, drove off, and realized something I hadn't dared say out loud until that moment. She never loved me. Not really. She loved being loved. And I gave that to her, free of charge, for 13 years. And when I finally stopped, she called it making it a thing. I didn't go home that night either. After seeing them together, I knew there was no returning to anything resembling normal. Even if she begged, even if she cried, I had finally crossed over that strange and painful threshold where your heart doesn't break anymore. It just goes quiet. You stop wanting answers. You stop needing them. The questions become pointless because you already know the truth. She never planned on telling you. You were just supposed to stay stupid long enough to make her escape easier. I drove back to the trailer and sat outside in the dark, staring at the reflection of the porch light in the hood of my car. My hand hovered over my phone for a long time. Not to call her, but to call someone. Anyone. But I didn't have that person anymore. I had isolated myself so deeply in trying to hold the marriage together that I forgot to build a life outside of it. No brothers. No best friends. My parents retired to Arizona years ago, and we hadn't spoken in a while, not because of a fight, but because I always said, "I'm fine," when they asked how I was. And what would I even tell them now? "Hey, Dad, turns out I spent the last decade with someone who outgrew me and forgot to tell me." I went inside, pulled the dusty curtains shut, and poured myself a glass of water that tasted like rust. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not from pain, but from clarity. My mind was replaying every missed warning, every half-truth she fed me, every time she told me I was being too sensitive or overthinking again. It was all part of a long, cruel strategy, redefining betrayal as my insecurity. But what really kept me up was something I hadn't told you yet. 3 months ago, we started trying for a baby. At least, I thought we were. It was her idea. She said she felt ready, that she wanted a fresh chapter. She even deleted the birth control tracking app on her phone in front of me. We lit candles, played soft music, and talked about names. I was terrified, but happy. Hopeful. Naively so. But that night, lying in that creaky old bed in my grandmother's trailer, I remembered something. A few weeks ago, she got sick. Morning nausea. Dizzy spells. I assumed she was pregnant. I got excited. She shut it down. Said it was just a bug and refused to take a test. I thought she was scared. Now I realized something far darker. What if she already knew? What if the baby wasn't mine? What if the fresh chapter had nothing to do with me at all? The thought made me nauseous. I sat up, cold sweat on my back, and dry heaved into the old bathroom sink. I didn't have proof. But betrayal like this doesn't need receipts to feel real. It settles into your gut like mold in the walls, and suddenly you're living inside a house you never built. The next morning, she finally called. I stared at the screen. Her name still said Delia because I hadn't had the strength to change it yet. The heart made my stomach twist. I answered. Her voice was soft, like she'd practiced it in the mirror. "Colin, I think we should talk." I didn't say anything. I know you're upset, and maybe I handled things wrong, but I think you misunderstood a lot. I waited. She continued. "It wasn't like a betrayal. You and I have been drifting for a long time, and I didn't want to hurt you." That's when I interrupted. "With who?" I said. My voice didn't even sound like mine. It was flat, dry, like I was narrating someone else's story. "What? With who?" I repeated. "Who were you laughing with in the bedroom? Who did you fly to Palm Springs with? Who are you rewriting your life with?" There was silence on the line. And then, "You went through my things?" That was her concern. Not the affair. Not the abandonment. But the invasion of her privacy. I hung up. I didn't throw the phone. Didn't scream. I just placed it gently on the nightstand and stared at the wall for the next hour. Because that's when I knew. I had spent 13 years loving someone who never intended to love me back the way I needed. She loved me like a pet, something to pat on the head and reward for obedience. Not a partner. Not an equal. And I let her. I woke up the next morning to the sound of rain tapping on the metal roof of the trailer like an impatient reminder that time was moving, even if I wasn't. I hadn't showered in days. My beard itched. My clothes smelled like sleep and disappointment. But my head? It was clearer than it had been in years. I didn't miss her anymore. That part scared me. It didn't feel like peace. It felt like something deeper. Like something had died inside me, and the funeral had already happened while I was asleep. That was the real betrayal. Not the affair. Not the lie. Not even the quiet plane ticket tucked away under the bed. No, what gutted me was realizing that I could finally picture my life without her, and it didn't feel like a tragedy. But that doesn't mean she was done with me. Around noon, I drove into town for groceries. I hadn't eaten anything that didn't come from a can in 4 days. I grabbed a few things: bread, peanut butter, apples, some coffee, and headed to the checkout, keeping my head low. I didn't expect to run into anyone. Wilmot County is quiet like that. But life has a cruel sense of humor. As I reached the register, I heard her voice behind me. I froze, not because I missed her, but because I realized I still recognized her voice in a room full of strangers. She was standing 2 aisles over, talking to someone I didn't know. Not arguing, not crying, just shopping, laughing, like nothing happened. She hadn't seen me yet. I backed away, tucked myself behind a shelf of greeting cards, and watched. The man she was talking to wasn't Landon, the one from the cafe. This was someone else. Younger, dressed in running gear. Handsy. He reached out and touched the small of her back as they looked at something in the freezer. She leaned into it. Not a flinch. Not even a pause. Like this was normal. Like this was hers now. I felt like a man watching his own funeral while his ex-wife handed out champagne in the front row. I left the cart. Walked out. Rain soaked through my hoodie by the time I made it to the car. I just sat there, watching the windshield blur with water, wondering how many versions of herself she had scattered across this town. How many different Delias existed depending on who she was standing next to. And then, for the first time, I let myself ask the hardest question. Was any of it ever real? The wedding vows. The Sunday mornings. The spontaneous kisses in grocery store aisles years ago when she used to love me out loud. Had I made it all up? Had I imagined the affection just because I wanted it so badly? I reached for my phone, against my better judgment, and opened our old photo album. The one we used to keep updated until she got too busy. There were photos of us at the lake. Her in sunglasses, me in a floppy hat. Laughing. Holding hands. I stared at one where she was kissing my cheek, and I remembered how warm that moment felt at the time. Now, all I could think was she already cheating then? There was no timestamp on emotional betrayal. No clear start date when someone begins to pull away. It happens like rust, slowly, silently, until one day you realize you're standing in a house built from pieces that were rotting the whole time. And that's when my phone rang. It wasn't her this time. It was her sister. I hesitated. But curiosity won. Hello. Her voice was tight, nervous. Colin. I'm sorry to call you, I think you should know something. And I'm sorry if I'm overstepping. I sat up. What is it? It's about Delia. I didn't want to get involved. I mean, you're grown adults, and she's my sister, but I found something. On her laptop. I swallowed hard. What kind of something? There was a pause. Colin, she's been keeping a journal. A private one. I only saw it because she left it open at our parents' house on accident. And it's not just the one guy. Not Landon. Not whoever she's seeing now. There were more. I don't know how many, but she wrote about them. Compared them to you. Rated them. My heart felt like it had just stopped beating. Rated them. Yeah. Like, she made lists. Strengths. Weaknesses. Intimacy. Emotional attachment. It was like reading some twisted Yelp reviews. And she wrote about how she couldn't believe you hadn't noticed. How boring you were. How easy it was to make you feel guilty for doubting her. The silence that followed wasn't shock. It was confirmation. Confirmation that I wasn't crazy. That the sick feeling I'd ignored for years was valid. That my loneliness had been carefully manufactured. Thank you for telling me. I finally whispered. She's going to be furious I told you. But I couldn't. I couldn't let you keep thinking you were the crazy one. I hung up and stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. For years, I thought I was hard to love. Turns out, I was just easy to use. It was early evening when I heard the knock. Not the panicked, desperate kind you see in movies. No pounding. No yelling. Just a soft, calculated rhythm, like she already assumed I would open. Like she believed, deep down, that no matter what she'd done, I was still the man she could count on to stand on the other side of the door, aching for her return. I didn't move right away. I sat on the old couch in the trailer, staring at the dusty lamp that hadn't worked since the Obama administration, listening to her knock again. Slower this time. More hesitant. Like she was second-guessing herself. Good. I eventually stood up. Not because I wanted to see her, but because I needed to. There was still one question that clawed at me in the quiet hours. One thing I couldn't bury under anger or silence. Was she ever going to tell me the truth, or was she just going to let me rot in ignorance forever? I opened the door. She stood there with a tote bag over her shoulder and sunglasses in her hair, even though the sun had already dipped behind the trees. Her makeup was immaculate, as if heartbreak could be staged. Her lips parted like she had something rehearsed, something scripted and polished and manipulative. "Colin," she said. I didn't respond. I stepped aside and let her in. She walked in like she still owned me, her eyes flickering across the room with faint disgust. The trailer wasn't her taste. Nothing about this place was. She used to call it your little escape pod. I used to think she said that lovingly. Now I realized it was always a dismissal. She sat down without asking. I stayed standing. "I didn't expect you to leave like that," she began, eyes locked on a crack in the wall instead of me. It felt dramatic. I laughed once. "Sharp. Dramatic? You took another man on a romantic getaway while I was doing your taxes and feeding our neighbor's cat. But I'm the dramatic one?" Her jaw tensed. "It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You lied. You cheated. You planned it." Her eyes darted toward the front door like she wanted an exit. But I wasn't going to let her twist this into an argument she could win. This wasn't about closure. It was about exposure. I wanted to see if she had the capacity for honesty, or if that too had been outsourced to someone else. "You weren't happy," she finally said. "We haven't been happy in years. I tried, Colin. I really did. But you're just always there. Quiet. Predictable. You never challenged me. I needed something more." There it was. The thesis of her betrayal. That I was the problem. That my stability was somehow suffocating. That my loyalty was a flaw. "You needed something more," I repeated slowly. "So you created a rotation? A review board? You rated them like apps, Delia." Her head snapped up. Her face drained of color. "What?" I stepped closer. "Your sister saw the files. The journal. The spreadsheets. The notes. The rankings. You weren't looking for something more. You were looking for everything you could take without getting caught." She stood abruptly. She had no right. I raised my hand. Not to threaten her. Just to stop her. She had every right. Because she saw what I refused to. You don't love people. You collect them. You see affection as currency. And when someone stops overpaying, you move on to the next wallet. That finally hit her. Not because it was harsh, but because it was true. She sat back down, this time with her shoulders slumped. "I didn't mean to hurt you. The saddest part? I believe that. I don't think she set out to ruin me. I think I was simply collateral. I was the dependable bridge between her chaotic infatuations. The safe place she knew would always be there, until I wasn't." "I know," I said. "That's the problem. You didn't mean to hurt me. You just didn't care enough not to." She looked at me for a long time. And for the first time since she walked in, I saw something unfamiliar in her eyes. Not guilt. Not sadness. Something closer to recognition. Like she was finally seeing me, not as her background character, but as the man who had quietly watched her burn everything down and simply stepped over the ashes. She reached into her bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I had these drawn up," she said. "I figured after everything, it's only fair." I unfolded it. Divorce papers. Already signed. She had come not to apologize, but to finalize. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I just nodded. "I'll have my half filed by the end of the week." She stood. "I'll leave the keys on the counter." And then, for the first time in years, she hesitated. She looked like she wanted to say something else. Maybe she thought this was the part where I would cry, or reach for her, or ask her to stay. I didn't. She walked out. And this time, I closed the door behind her. The morning after she left the trailer for the last time, I woke up before the sun. It wasn't planned. I hadn't set an alarm. My body just knew. Something inside me had shifted. Like I'd unknowingly pressed some invisible button in my chest that said, "It's done. You're not hers anymore." The heaviness was still there. Betrayal doesn't vanish overnight. But the fog was gone. The confusion, the self-doubt, all of it had finally been stripped away like a scab peeled off to reveal raw but healing skin. I sat outside on the crooked porch steps of the trailer with a cup of instant coffee, listening to birds that didn't know or care that my entire world had recently caved in. The sun pushed slowly over the trees, and I realized something I hadn't dared admit until then. I didn't want her back. Not even a little. Not even if she begged. Not even if she cried. Not even if she said all the right things, finally, in the right order. The love was gone. Whatever was left was just memory and muscle reflex. And both were fading. Later that day, I went back into town to meet with the lawyer she mentioned in the divorce papers. Small office, worn carpet, a tired receptionist who looked like she'd heard every version of every sad story. The lawyer was professional, cold, but not unkind. He slid a stack of documents across the desk without much eye contact and said, "Your signature, here and here." As I flipped through the pages, something caught my eye. A line in the financial agreement about joint assets being liquidated. Specifically, the sale of our house. I froze. Our house is already listed? The lawyer raised an eyebrow. Yes. Your wife signed the release form last month. Didn't she tell you? Last month. She had planned to sell our home before she ever packed that bag. Before Palm Springs. Before the journal. Before everything. She had erased me before I even knew I was being erased. I swallowed hard and forced myself to keep reading. My name was still on the deed. She had no right to list the house without my consent. But she did it anyway. Confident I'd be too passive to object. Too loyal to check. I signed everything else. But I paused on that page. No, I said finally. This part's not happening. She doesn't get to sell the house I worked 3 jobs to pay for just because she found a shinier distraction. The lawyer didn't fight me. He nodded, made a note, and said he'd revise the agreement. It didn't give me satisfaction, but it gave me something I hadn't had in years, control. On the way back to the trailer, I passed our old house. I told myself I wouldn't look, but of course I did. The for sale sign was out front, bright red and bold. But what caught my attention wasn't the sign. It was the car parked in the driveway. Not hers. His. Landon's. He was inside my house, sitting on my porch furniture, drinking my wine. I pulled over and sat there in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles ached. I wasn't going to confront him. This wasn't about him. It never really had been. He wasn't the thief. He was just the pawn who wandered in through a door I left open for too long. But I wasn't going to walk away from that house like it never held me. I wasn't going to let her erase everything and call it a fresh start. So I got out, walked to the door, and knocked once. He answered. He looked surprised, then smug, then cautious. Like he wasn't sure if I was going to punch him or cry. I didn't either. "I'm not here for drama," I said calmly. "Just tell her this. She doesn't get to rewrite the ending. Not without me signing off on the last chapter." He didn't reply, just nodded and shut the door. I walked back to my car, slower this time. Not because I was defeated, but because I felt the weight of something lifting with every step. She could have her affairs, her fake journaling, her Lover of the Month auditions. But she wasn't going to rewrite who I was. Not anymore. That night, I opened a blank document on an old laptop I hadn't touched in years. I started typing. Not a letter. Not a revenge post. Just the truth. My truth. About what it's like to be the man who stays. Who forgives too much. Who loves too quietly. And who finally learns that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. I wrote for hours. And for the first time in over a decade, I felt real. It's strange how healing doesn't feel like fireworks. It doesn't roar. It doesn't come with applause or a swelling soundtrack. Healing is quiet. Healing is me, sitting at a coffee shop with a laptop that used to collect dust, writing this while the barista hums off-key and strangers laugh at tables around me. Healing is ordinary. And that's what makes it so beautiful. It's been 6 months since I walked out of the house that no longer felt like mine. 3 since the divorce was finalized. 2 since I officially bought out her share of the home and handed the keys to a young couple expecting their first child. I didn't need the house anymore. It was filled with memories I didn't want to spend another year trying to bleach out of the walls. Let someone else start fresh. I wished them joy. Genuinely. Delia never reached out again. Not after I refused to let her steal the ending. I think part of her assumed I'd come crawling back, or that I'd spiral without her. But I didn't. I walked forward, one step at a time, even when it hurt. And somewhere along the way, it stopped hurting. I moved into a small apartment just outside the city. It's nothing fancy, secondhand furniture, mismatched dishes, a tiny balcony where I keep a single chair and an ashtray I don't use. But it's mine. Every inch of it is mine. And for the first time in my adult life, I wake up in the morning without bracing for tension. There's no silence masking contempt. No questions answered with rolled eyes. No pretending. I started writing again. Not just this story, others too. Things I buried when I spent all my energy being her emotional scaffolding. I even submitted a short story to a local literary journal. They didn't accept it, but they wrote back. A real human wrote back. "You have something here," she said. "Keep going." So I did. I also started seeing someone, not in the way people rush to fill a void, but slowly, gently. Her name's Molly. She teaches elementary school, hates loud bars, and once rescued a squirrel with a broken leg. She doesn't make me feel small. She doesn't make me guess. She sees me. But here's the real twist. This story isn't about her. Or about Delia. It's about me. It's about the version of myself I found after everything else was taken away. The man who thought being quiet meant being weak. The man who thought being patient would earn him loyalty. The man who stayed far too long because he believed love meant endurance. I was wrong. Love is not endurance. Love is honesty. It's effort. It's showing up even when you don't feel like it. And it's knowing when to let go before the damage rewrites who you are. I'm not bitter. I'm not broken. I'm awake. So here I am. Still quiet. Still gentle. Still me. But no longer invisible. And to anyone watching this who's ever felt like walking away meant giving up, I promise you, sometimes the strongest thing you'll ever do is walk away quietly and never look back. Thank you for walking through this with me. Now I'll leave you with a question. What was the moment in this story where you would have walked away? Drop it in the comments. I'll be reading every single one. And if this story meant something to you, you're in the right place. This is Reddit Confessions, where the quiet voices finally get heard. Until next time, be kind to yourself. You deserve it.